What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe as you tune into the channel. Check out the content. With that being said, man, I want to speak on a recent episode of Scat Attack. Right when he basically talking about teams like tanking, and NBA teams tanking harder than they've ever tanked before, right? And that might be the case, but I think the way you get rid of tanking, though, like tanking will that's a problem in the NBA. I think that'll work itself out because if you look at teams that tanked in the past and had no success, like recently you had the Philadelphia 76ers who tanked so they can get a whole bunch of draft picks and put a lot of talent around Joel Embiid, right? And for them, it didn't pan out, right? And so I don't think tanking is an issue. I don't think and he said it like the league is rigged, but it might be to a certain extent. But the way you get around things like that is put talent on the court and put competitors on the court. Like people who want to win and people who are competitive. If the Washington Wizards tank, or if let me see, or if the Sacramento Kings tank, they just going to continuously stay at the bottom. But when you have a bunch of competitors and guys who want to win on your team, that's how you overcome tanking and rigging of the games and stuff like that. That's not something that you have to worry about as far as like um or the league gonna have to step in and all this stuff, because sometimes the owners do, they want to get the number one draft choice, so they'll tank. But then even when you get the number one draft choice, that's no guarantee that your team is going to be, your team is going to be on a come up. What'll happen is your team will be used as a farm system for a better team, and then that player, when his contract is up, will wind up going to a better team. So, but let me get to what Scat had to say about it, and then I'm gonna come back and give some more of my input.
Against the Orlando Magic. Again, a game that the Jazz were leading by 7.
Hold up.
Jazz played the Sacramento Kings last night in the Great American NBA Tank-Off. Sacramento, with the worst record in the NBA by a margin, actually, they entered the night just 12-43 on the year. The Jazz, meanwhile, are the most notorious recent tankers at the moment. And the NBA, look, they are no stranger to tanking. Of course, the Philadelphia 76ers trusted the process for several years around Joel Embiid while they were trying to amass as many favorable draft picks as they can. Of course, that certainly worked out very well for the Philadelphia 76ers, as they have never one time been out of the second round in the Joel Embiid era.
Trust the process.
Thanks, Joel. And of course, right around that same time, there was an actual league-wide strategy being deployed for tanking. It was called the Riggin for Wiggins movement. Do you remember that one? Yeah, back in 2013, when Andrew Wiggins was hitting the draft lottery and every team in the NBA was drooling all over themselves and tripping over each other while trying to tank their way into winning that pick. Yes, and of course
Yeah, see, and see, that's my point. Teams do tank so they can get the number one draft pick, and they want a certain player, but this is no guarantee. Like Wiggins is a really good basketball player, and Andrew Wiggins won a championship with Golden State Warriors, but he didn't lead them to that, right? And so and he, as a matter of fact, I'm not even sure what team Cleveland drafted him, but I think Cleveland traded him because they wanted Kyrie Irving. Who else they wanted? Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving, right? So they wind up not even getting him. They wind up sending him somewhere else. But the thing is, teams that tank, or teams that try to rig the situation, don't even wind up coming ahead. getting ahead. So I don't even think it's something that the league really have to address.
NBA instituted the draft lottery in a way actually to combat rigging and tanking games. But I mean, what good does it realistically do if the league installs a strategy to fight rigging and tanking, but they themselves are potentially rigging that lottery? And I'll just leave it up to you guys to formulate your own opinion on that. But there is a vast history of potential examples of the NBA's intervention in helping to sway those ping pong balls to fall a certain way. Like when the New York Knicks got Patrick Ewing, when the Cleveland Cavaliers got LeBron James. Oh, and speaking of that Andrew Wiggins lottery, when the Cleveland Cavaliers won that lottery and was able to utilize Andrew Wiggins as a trade chip to bring in Kevin Love to help facilitate a return to Cleveland for LeBron James. And most recently, again, things seem to swirl around LeBron James. The Dallas Mavericks sending LeBron James and the Lakers Luka Doncic for a bag of potato chips, but then the NBA giving the Dallas Mavericks the #1 overall pick, which became the transcendent Cooper Flag, of course. But hey,
see, I don't think, like I said, that tanking and rigging the games, I think that'll work itself out. Because players, when you, like I said, you get competitive guys who want to win, and the NBA has always been doing this, like as far as rigging and stuff like that. When you think about how the Boston Celtics got Larry Bird, right? Red Auerbach drafted Larry Bird a year before he graduated from college. And then they made it possible for the Lakers to get Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So they've been making those kind of moves since day one. But what the difference is between then and now is those players played hard. If you tank to get a player, or if you rig the league so you can get a certain player, just imagine if Larry Bird and Magic Johnson didn't play hard. They just played like, they play soft, and they just, it don't make no difference what team you put them on. Those guys still have to perform. So, I just think it's something that will work itself out through competition, because if you don't play hard, then you're going to lose. I don't care who you draft, who you get to draft, who you get to put on your team.
I'm not here to talk about NBA conspiracy theories. I'm here to talk about concrete rigging, which is why we're talking Utah Jazz, because they are rigging their asses off. Most notably in two of their most recent losses against the Atlanta Hawks and the Orlando Magic, back-to-back games. And the Jazz were actually leading the Atlanta Hawks by 4 at the end of the third quarter, but they ended up losing that game 121-119 because, in large part, they sat Lauri Markkanen for the entire fourth quarter.
Look, in organizations that I believe, organizations that do this, players know what's going on, and players resent that, right? Because if you competitive and you don't get a chance to get out there on that court and show what you can do, they putting your job on the line. So when your contract is up as a player, if you can go somewhere else and play with people who want to win, then you're going to do that. And what happens to the team that tank? They're going to lose good ball players, right? Like the ball players that can help the team, they're going to lose those guys, and players going to want to move on. So, like I said, it all pans itself out, in my opinion. Utah has that. They got the I forgot that kid name. He really good. He on his rookie contract, right? I forgot his name. But anyway, if he noticed that this league, this team don't want to win, then Utah not gonna be able to hold them. And that's a shame. Like the Utah Jazz organization didn't used to be like that when they had Karl Malone, John Stockton, and Jerry Sloan was the coach. They didn't do that. They just coached those guys up and put talent around their leaders.
Then in their very next game against the Orlando Magic, well, they lost that one 120-117. Again, despite leading through 3, they were up 7 at the end of the third quarter, but they ultimately sat both Lauri Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr., who had 49 points through the first three, yet neither of them played a single second in the fourth quarter. In fact, in that game against the Orlando Magic, again, a game that the Jazz were leading by 7 at the end of 3, 4 of the 5 starters for the Utah Jazz did not log a single second in that final frame. And that,
yeah, see, those players, they know what's going on. They see what's going on. As soon as they get an opportunity to get out of there, they gonna roll out. They want to, they want to go somewhere where they can win, especially if they're competitors.
would be, of course, the aforementioned Markkanen and Jackson, and joining them was Yusuf Nurkic and Keontae George. Again, did not log a single second. They take a 7-point lead, lose that quarter by 10, and end up dropping that one 120 to 117. And this was a strategy that had many taking note about the unparalleled rigging sweeping across the NBA today, such as former player Kenyon Martin.
Man, it's disgusting. It is a disgusting display of non-competitive natured organizations. I think it's awful for the game. I think it's awful for sports. Something has to be done, man. It's when you're making it blatantly obvious like that, the league has to step in, man. It has to be a draft pick, some fines, something has to give.
See, and Kenyon Martin said it's blatantly obvious, right? So if everybody can see it, that team, that organization, I think they just gonna hurt themselves. Philadelphia, what they did with Joel Embiid, they didn't benefit with that from that. I can't think of a team that constantly tanked and wound up, in a few years, like putting themselves in a position to win a championship. I just don't think that's the way you do that, so yeah, that's my take on it. I think just for the league to be more competitive, I think, that's how competition, I think, weans out all the guys who really don't want to play, right? And so you can't really control like what ownership do, what managers do. Players just not gonna want to go to those type of organizations. Players want to go somewhere where they can win and they have a chance of extending their career, by having success. So that's what that is, man. And I think that situation will iron itself out. So that's my take on it. Make sure to like, subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to leave a comment, and I'll check you all out in the next video. Peace.